Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 131. We're going to talk about Chabelo and Pepito versus the Monsters from 1973. I could finally watch this when it was recently added to Amazon Prime with English subtitles. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can also find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. The film was directed by Jose Estrada, written by Tony Sibert. I think that's how you pronounce it. Jose Estrada worked in Mexican cinema for about 20 years. Tony Sibert was born in France but worked as a screenwriter in Mexican cinema during the 70s. The cast includes Javier Lopez as Chabelo, Martin Ramos Arevalo as Pepito, Sylvia Pasquel as Alicia, Pedro Reguero as Gerardo, Emma Gris as Mama de Pepito, Manuel Cepeda as Monstro, Nathaniel Leon as Spectrum 2, and Eduardo Casab as Spectrum 5. Apologies for pronunciations here. Javier Lopez Rodriguez, famously known as Chabelo, was a legendary Mexican television personality born in Chicago, Illinois. We're going to talk a lot more about him in a second. Martin Ramos Arevalo played Pepito in 3 early 70s films. Sylvia Pasquel belongs to one of Mexico's most prominent entertainment families, born to the legendary actress Sylvia Pinal, and half-siblings to musicians Alejandra Guzman and Luis Enrique Guzman. Beginning her acting career in the 60s, Pasquel made her mark primarily in telenovelas and Mexican soap operas. She is mother to actress Stephanie Salas and has maintained an active presence in the entertainment industry throughout her career, continuing to perform well into her 70s. I could find little biographical information about Nathaniel Leon, but he has 149 credits, mostly in Mexican sci-fi and horror. He looks like an interesting guy. As much as there is some good stuff here, I can't recommend this film outside of fans who grew up with it. I bet they love it, and I understand why, even if I don't share the nostalgia. If you're interested in Mexican children's cinema or how Universal monster movies were adapted for young audiences in different cultures, then check it out. The production values are modest, but there is an undeniable charm in how it combines comedy with classic monster movie elements. Most of the film has subtitles. There are sections without them, and I was left to puzzle through the Spanish based on context clues, and I don't speak Spanish. This film was part of a series of children's comedies starring Chabelo and Pepito, who were well-known figures in Mexican children's entertainment. Javier Lopez Rodriguez, better known by his stage name Chabelo, was one of Mexico's most iconic and enduring entertainers. Born in Chicago, he became a cultural phenomenon in Mexico through his 48-year run hosting the children's television show En Familia con Chabelo from 1967 until 2015. His distinctive characteristic was his performance persona, an adult man dressed and acting like a young boy, complete with schoolboy outfit and childlike mannerisms. This approach endeared him to generations of Mexican families, earning him the nickname El Amigo de Todos los Niños, the friend of all children. His influence extended beyond his show. Chabelo appeared in over 30 films and recorded over 30 children's albums. He was also a marketing icon, with his image appearing on everything from toys to food products. The format of En Familia con Chabelo combined entertainment with education, featuring games, contests, and performances engaging both children and parents. This multi-generational appeal was key to the show's longevity and Chabelo's lasting impact on Mexican popular culture. Despite retiring in 2015, Chabelo remained a beloved figure in Mexico until his passing in 2023 at the age of 88. His legacy lives on through the generations of Mexicans who grew up watching him every Sunday morning, and his lasting impact on Mexican children's entertainment. So now let's move on to the synopsis. 2 young cousins, Chabelo and Pepito, play war. They screw up an older sister Alicia's date and make a mess of dinner. The next day, they head out with their Boy Scout troop on a camping trip. They do a good deed and rescue a guy trapped by a wagon. He turns out to be a monster who warns them not to go the way they are headed. Alicia camps nearby to keep an eye on them. Oh, no, stuck up with her boyfriend, who is one of the scout leaders. The other boys tease Pepito because his sister is there. Chabelo and Pepito sneak off in the morning, I guess to teach Alicia a lesson. This was one of the parts where the subtitles dropped out. In response, the troop splits up. Half goes for help, half proves remarkably competent and tracks the foolish boys. The pair encounter a gorilla in the dusty hills of Mexico. The troop has the sense to run from a random gorilla. Chabelo and Pepito take refuge in a cave where they find a skeleton and some bats. They are properly terrified now. Deep in the cave, they find a sarcophagus. They argue about whether this is the kind of sarcophagus that holds a dead body or treasure. Greed beats out fear, and they open it. When they see a mummy inside, they close it and pile stones on it. Next, they run into a gill man. They escape only to run into Frankenstein's monster. They find a secret door and find themselves in a haunted and booby-trapped castle. Their scouting skills save them repeatedly. The troop is dogged and brave in their pursuit. They track the missing pair to the castle. Both our heroes and the troop find somewhere to hole up and rest for the night. The next day, the troop finally sees the mummy and gains access to the castle. Meanwhile, the scouts who went for help find the castle as well. The Wolfman shows up. Finally, he encounters the scouts in the wilderness, who all arm themselves with torches and drive him away. Chabelo and Pepito explore more of the castle and find Dracula's empty casket. It's empty because the vampire is sneaking up behind them. Luckily, Pepito has been wearing a comically large wooden cross the entire movie, and they drive Dracula off. Seriously, the cross is about the same size as Flavor Flav's clock necklaces. Our heroes dodge multiple monsters and manage to escape the castle, but the castle grounds are swarming with masked minions loading a helicopter. In a high-tech control room, turns out a mad scientist has been monitoring the scouts the entire time. He works for an organization called Spectrum. The scouts on the surface are rounded up first. Chabelo and Pepito evade capture. The mad scientist plans to steal the scouts' brains. The scouts in the castle kill the Wolfman. It's humiliating. Chabelo demonstrates steel bar bending strength to break into the command center. It turns out that all of the monsters are robots. So why did the cross work on Dracula? I don't know. The minions capture Chabelo and Pepito. That's when the rest of the troop shows up. A melee breaks out between the scouts and the robots. Unfortunately, the robots win. Chabelo and Pepito are the only scouts who manage to escape. They head back to the control room and bust up the master control brain, deactivating all the robots and saving the day. The troop chases down the mad scientist and his human aide and turns them all over to the police. The end. The monster designs here are inspired by the Universal monsters, but with a distinctly Mexican interpretation. The makeup and costumes are simpler than their Hollywood counterparts, but this actually works in the film's favor, making the monsters less frightening for the young target audience while maintaining their recognizable characteristics. So, this isn't a werewolf movie on multiple fronts. First, the werewolf is barely in the film. He gets two scenes where all he does is gets chased off by one set of scouts and killed by Chabelo and Pepito like a chump. More importantly, he's a robot disguised as a werewolf, which is the long way of saying there is no werewolf lore to discuss. Like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, Chabelo and Pepito Against the Monsters serves as a fascinating example of how comedy and friendship can be used to combat fear, this time in the context aimed at a young audience. The film takes classic horror movie monsters and transforms them from figures of terror into sources of entertainment through the power of humor and camaraderie. I'm reminded of the ridiculous spell from Harry Potter. One of the best ways to conquer fear is to see right through it. To quote President Roosevelt, all we have to fear is fear itself. At the heart of the film is the friendship between Chabelo and Pepito. Their dynamic showcases how mutual support and encouragement can help overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. When one character shows fear, the other provides comfort or finds humor in the situation, teaching young viewers that having a trusted friend by your side can make scary situations feel a little less threatening. The film's approach to horror elements is also noteworthy. Rather than trying to genuinely frighten its young audience, it uses comedy to defang traditional movie monsters by presenting these creatures in humorous situations and having them interact with the protagonist's silly antics. The film helps demystify common childhood fears. Ultimately, it's revealed that they aren't even what they seem to be. Instead of supernatural creatures of the night, they're robots. This technique serves a dual purpose, entertaining the audience while also teaching them that what seems scary at first glance might not be so frightening upon closer inspection. The film demonstrates that courage doesn't mean being fearless. I mean, these kids are scared all the time in this movie. Rather, it's about facing fears despite being scared. Through Chabelo and Pepito's adventures, young viewers learn it's normal to feel afraid, but those fears can be overcome through friendship, laughter, and clever thinking. The protagonists don't defeat the monsters through physical strength or special powers, but through wit, humor, and their unwavering support for each other. They win because the scout troop works together. This message extends beyond its supernatural elements, offering lessons that apply to real-world situations. When Chabelo and Pepito transform frightening encounters into adventures through friendship and positive attitudes, it teaches children that many of life's challenging situations can be approached with a similar mindset. The power of turning fear into laughter becomes a tool that young viewers can apply to their own lives, whether dealing with mundane fears like darkness or more complex social anxieties. This approach to children's entertainment demonstrates an understanding of how young minds process fear and the importance of providing them with positive coping mechanisms. By wrapping these lessons in comedy and adventure, the film makes its message more accessible and memorable for its target audience, showing that even the scariest situation can become less daunting when faced with friendship, humor, and courage. I don't know that we're going to get a better chance to discuss the Boy Scouts, though who knows? Weirder werewolf movies have been made. I have seen a movie about Boy Scouts facing zombies, but it feels like the Scouts' outdoor camping emphasis would make a better setting for a film about Scouts versus werewolves. All that said, I apologize if this goes long. I am an Eagle Scout and a proud Boy Scout. My first job with a paycheck was working at Scout Camp teaching swimming, lifeguarding, canoeing, and rowing. And it's also where I saw Friday the 13th for the first time, at a youth camp lodge next to a lake. Magical experience that helps explain part of why I like horror films. All that to say, I was never in a troop this uniformly uniformed. The origins of the Boy Scouts trace back to the British military officer Robert Baden-Powell. During the Second Boer War, Baden-Powell noted that young boys could and did assist with essential tasks when properly trained. Drawing upon his military experience, he wrote Aids to Scouting in 1899, intended as a military training manual. To his surprise, the book achieved popularity among boys, attracted to its focus on outdoor skills and adventure. In 1907, Baden-Powell organized the first experimental scout camp. This camp hosted 20 boys and tested his ideas about youth training and development. The success of this camp led to the publication of Scouting for Boys in 1908, laying out the basic principles of scouting. The book led to scout troops being established across Britain and shortly thereafter throughout territories in the British imperial sphere of influence. William Boyce incorporated the Boy Scouts of America, the BSA, in 1910 after allegedly being helped by an unknown scout in London who refused a tip for his assistance. This story, known as the Unknown Scout Legend, is a cornerstone of American scouting lore. The World Organization of the Scouting Movement, WOSM, was established in 1922 to coordinate the growing number of national scouting organizations. Today, WOSM represents over 40 million scouts in more than 170 countries. Each nation has adapted the core principles of scouting to reflect its cultural values while maintaining the fundamental elements of outdoor skills, citizenship, and personal development. The movement has faced challenges throughout history. During World War II, scouting was banned in Nazi Germany and occupied countries. Many scouts joined resistance movements. In the post-colonial era, some nations rejected scouting as a vestige of imperialism, though many later readopted it with modifications to suit their national contexts. Scouting also made significant contributions during times of crisis. During both World Wars, scouts served as messengers, helped with civil defense, and supported relief efforts. More recently, scout organizations have been active in disaster relief, environmental conservation, and public health campaigns, including efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the 21st century, scouting organizations have grappled with modernization, trying to remain relevant while preserving traditional values with questionable success. Early scouting focused heavily on military-style discipline and outdoor survival skills. Modern scouting encompasses a broad range of activities, including environmental conservation, community service, and STEM education. In different parts of the world, scouting takes on unique characteristics while maintaining core principles. In Indonesia, for example, scouting, called, I understand, pramuka, is compulsory in schools and emphasizes national unity. In Israel, the scout movement, SOFIM, again, apologize for that pronunciation, significantly promotes social values, coexistence, and tolerance between ethnic groups. African scouting organizations often focus on public health education and community development. Which brings us to scouting in Mexico. The Boy Scouts of Mexico, officially known as Asociación de Scouts de Mexico, AC, or ASMAC, dates to the early 20th century. The movement began around 1911 when British mining engineers and other expatriates introduced scouting concepts to local youth. The first official Mexican scout group was founded in 1913 in Tampico by Ramon Coronado. Mexican scouting developed unique characteristics reflecting the nation's cultural heritage and social needs. Early on, the movement played a role during the Mexican Revolution, with scouts delivering messages and providing first aid. The Mexican government formally recognized the ASMAC in 1926, marking it as a major youth development institution in the country. A distinctive aspect of Mexican Scouting has been its integration of indigenous cultural elements and traditions into the standard Scouting program. While maintaining principles established by Baden-Powell, Mexican Scouts incorporate activities and ceremonies celebrating the region's pre-Hispanic heritage and colonial history, including using Aztec and Mayan symbols in Scout ceremonies. The organization maintains strong ties with the Catholic Church and the Mexican government, reflecting a complex relationship between secular and religious institutions in Mexican society. The movement was crucial in promoting citizenship and community service, particularly in urban areas where social programs are most needed. One contribution to Mexican Scouting has been its role in disaster relief and community service. Scouts provided aid during natural disasters, including earthquakes, hurricanes, and floods. The 1985 Mexico City earthquake, in particular, saw Scouts playing a part in rescue and relief efforts. The organization's emphasis on service, leadership, and personal development remains as relevant today as it was when Scouting first arrived in Mexico over a century ago. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know if we have any Mexican Boy Scouts. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, we finally say goodbye to Paul Naschy and discuss Tomb of the Werewolf from 2004. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.